with reports linking protest flyers to the shooter. How concerned should be about the radicalization within protest movements?
Protest this started out as a very broad-based movement opposing what participants viewed as creeping authoritarianism. In other words, it was a completely politically legitimate movement, and still many people there protesting all over the country are protesting peacefully, and we can see that from the visuals. However, they have also some elements of these movements have evolved into a much more confrontational and at times volatile and even violent force. We've seen the burnings in LA. We have seen incidents of individuals with foreign flags, and we have seen adaptations of unrelated narratives, including in support of Hamas, something that we have seen through some of the campus protests earlier. And we have seen the same sort of creeping radicalization infiltrating the movements as happened during the George Floyd protests several years ago. So there is definitely a pattern to that. The core message still calls for restoration of democratic norms, but the tactics and tones are being increasingly hijacked by a group of loud and increasingly radicalized individuals. How many of them are foreign and how many of them are American? It's hard to say at this time, but it's happening increasingly, especially in major urban centers like Philadelphia and now Washington and even New York. Of course, the frustrations with perceived systemic abuses are running deep. That, of course, is no excuse for violence or targeting anybody. But does that mean that this sort of violent messaging can play into the hands of other individuals with radical or self-serving goals? Absolutely.
And
Many
Raina, can I just jump in on that and follow up on that comment? My esteemed colleague in New York brings up a very good point, and the reality is we also have to recognize many of these protests are self-inflicted by Donald Trump. If we
Sir,
look
why
at
are
what is
they self-inflicted by Donald Trump? Donald Trump is supposed to be the leader of this country and the leader and one of the most important and strongest leaders of the strongest world in the country in the world. Why is all of this happening?
Raina, the reality is, and that is the great experiment, is what we have to realize is that, the reason why some of this is self-inflicted by Donald Trump is it's not the fact that he is the president, it's how he governs. It's the rhetoric that he uses. It's what comes out of his mouth. The reason why there are no King's protests is because of the fact he's been comparing himself to a monarchical ruler since he was inaugurated back in January. The reason why he has self-inflicted some of this is because we've never seen a military parade like this until he wanted it for his birthday, which also
Exactly,
coincided
sir.
with
This
the
was the question I asked you. We're emphasizing on Trump's birthday. Is this your narrative exactly? What he wants? He wants to emphasize on his birthday, or he wants to emphasize on this parade, or what's happening globally in light of what's happening in LA, for example. I'm not discussing the Middle East. I'm not discussing Gaza. I'm not discussing the atrocities and genocides that are taking place. I'm discussing at least LA and what's happening of protests over there because of him and his acts.
Raina, nobody has ever said that Donald Trump is the greatest when it comes to political timing or how he uses political rhetoric. I mean, even some of his allies will say, once in a while, he should probably keep his mouth shut. Don't go off script.
Can you say this again, sir, please?
Nobody will ever accuse Donald Trump of having great political timing. No, even some of his closest allies say Donald Trump needs to keep his mouth shut sometimes. That's a reality. Nobody has said that he's good at this. What he is, however, what he is doing, and this is some of the problems that we're running into, is that he loves the chaos. And chaos is what drives him.
He is not the man of peace, sir, that we've been talking about since he took, of course, since he became the president of the United States.
Well, Raina, I mean, look, the man campaigned. on peace. The man said, once I'm elected and once I'm installed as the president for my next term, I will go ahead and I will solve the Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours. I will stop the ongoing situation in Gaza. I will fix that. Any other problems in the world, I'll make that go away. That hasn't happened. And that is where sometimes it is better to keep your mouth shut and work through actions than to work in front of a TV cam. And that's what we're seeing is we're seeing a TV star. This is what happens when you elect a TV star to be president who thrives on the spotlight being on him. And this is what's happened. And that is why we're seeing a lot
I'll
of
leave it
these
there and I'll
protests.
be back to you again, Mr. Russell. Ms. Tuskerman, do the No Kings demonstrations reflect a new wave of civil resistance, or are they veering towards performative activism?
This is performative activism. The violent element is definitely performative. Yes, having mass demonstrations sends a political message for sure, but I'm not sure how simply going out on the street is going to change the mind of lawmakers. They usually prefer to engage through discussions, through conversations, through specific concerns, and through action-oriented suggestions from their constituents. Simply saying that you don't like Donald Trump's political posture and his messaging is not going to necessarily change any of that. And violence actually makes it more counterproductive. Violence actually engages Trump and gives him an excuse to use harsher security measures against everyone involved. I sometimes wonder whether the groups that are engaging in arson and violent actions are deliberately trying to instigate violent confrontation between the U.S. government and the protesters overall and contribute to the chaos. I wonder whether those elements are not deliberately trying to instigate a very dangerous situation by playing on the current divisions, on the personality of Donald Trump, and the sort of strong leadership expected from them that the government expects from him.